Hey there! Welcome to the Distracted Librarians podcast. We're your friendly neighborhood bookworms with a penchant for all things pop culture.
Picture this as our digital campfire, where we dive into our latest obsessions, analyze our favorite distractions, and rediscover the joy of reading.
Whether you're a media enthusiast, a book lover, or just need a break from the daily grind, you've come to the right spot.
So kick back, relax, and get delightfully distracted with us.
Hey everybody! On this episode of Distracted Librarians, we're going to talk about library misconceptions. And there are a lot of them. Don't you think?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm Nicole.
I'm Killian.
And I'm Drew.
And yeah, we're just going to go down this like really fun list of things that we found. A love of books. Do all librarians have to have a love of books?
I think there's a kernel of truth in it because so much of the job, at least in the public librarian sphere, does revolve around books. That's what people are more often than not coming to the library for. But is it a requirement? No, of course not.
Mm-hmm.
You also cannot be a librarian on love of books alone.
No.
And I think that is one of the big things. Oh, I love books. I would love to be a librarian. Okay, well...
Yeah. Well, and something that I found interesting when I was in library school was that there were a lot of students that had never worked in a library before. And I found that an interesting thing because it's almost like it's like picking a career out of a hat in a way. You know, I mean, of course,
I was one of those
Were
students.
you? Okay. Well, I came from the other end of things where I worked in a library my entire life. Mm-hmm. And then I had a stint in book selling and back to the library. But, you know, I think that there's like this idea of what the library is and this idea of what a librarian does. And I mean, we're going to get into the nitty gritty of all of that stuff. But like, and I'd love to kind of hear what you might have learned from when you actually got into the field and what you noted was different than your original thoughts.
Yeah, so I didn't go in thinking, yes, I went in going, I love books and I love reading. But also, like, that's just who I am as a person. That wasn't why I decided to go to grad school to be a librarian. I had been in a YA Lit class at CMU, mm-hmm. and that class was cross-listed between the English department, the education department, and also as an LIS class, a library services, library science class, which they had a few of without having a full program. Mm-hmm. So that class covered YA literature, but it also covered YA literature in the classroom and YA like teen librarianship. Mm-hmm. And so it was me reading in a textbook about teen librarianship and going, well, I don't know what else I'm going to do with my English degree at the end of this year. And that sounds like a good time. Mm-hmm. And it did talk about, like, with that, doing programming and customer service elements of it. So I did go into grad school, though I had not worked in a library, with an understanding that it wasn't just going to be, I like books, so this is perfect. Mm-hmm. I do think some of my classmates came in with, I like books and this is going to be perfect.
Yeah, totally.
But
yeah,
I think it was interesting to see the people who came into it having worked in libraries, or the people who got library jobs because they were going into the program. Because mm-hmm. there were a few people like that too. Who they hadn't worked in a library before, but they got a library job and started grad school right around the same time.
Yeah. Well, and I think I should mention that there are lots of different types of librarians also. Mm-hmm. So,
I think that's on the list too, yeah.
Is it on there? Oh, geez, oh, Pete. Well, we'll get to it.
Let's do it. All librarians work in public libraries is another misconception that we have.
So we clearly... there are librarians that work in various places. There are specialized libraries. We work in a public library, but there are media specialists, people that work in the schools. There are people that work in prisons. There are people that work in law libraries, university libraries, government. even businesses may hire a librarian just to work on the premises to do research and different things like that.
I saw a job posting once for the librarian at the Disney Archives.
See, there you go.
And like medical librarians are a thing with doing that research, and managing that information. That's a big thing. Is with public libraries, we do a lot with books and other materials, but these other library fields, the materials they work with aren't always so literature and even print book heavy.
Well,
there are music librarians who work with sheet music
Yep.
and audio recordings.
Or
things like that.
even three-dimensional objects like sculpture, where they're working in an archive, and that's a completely different kind of thing, so you don't have to love books. It is nice. I think it helps a little bit. Yeah.
It certainly does, because being on the public service desk, more often than not, I don't think I've gone a week without someone asking for something that I've liked in the past, or asking what I'm reading now. A couple of the programs and like things that I do at the library are based around things that I've enjoyed to read and trying to convince others to.
Sure.
So it is very important, at least in the public librarian sector,
Definitely.
to have a love of books, have a love of reading. I think you're spot on that it just can't be all that you're coming in with.
Definitely.
You've got to go into it understanding there's a customer service element and there's the information management element.
Organizing. I mean, sometimes organizing a party, like us in youth services, like it's not even like always story time. Sometimes we're planning like a big event and we become party planners like out of nowhere. I mean, it's actually funny because when I was first engaged to my husband, I was going to plan our wedding myself. And it seemed really daunting because I only had a few months to do it. And I thought to myself, I'm like, I can do this. I am a librarian. I have planned so many parties, and like, I feel really comfortable doing that kind of stuff. So things that you don't realize are part of the job.
I think that kind of plays into one of the other misconceptions we had listed, which is that the librarian role is static and unchanging.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so whereas one, we put on 1,012 different hats every day anyway, party planner, the number of times I've been called teacher because I run story time, and it's they see story time as we're going to school, we're going to class, and so the person at the head of that is teacher. Okay.
Yeah.
But we also see a lot of change over time, not just like the day-to-day 1,012 roles that we all fill, but you see it change over time too.
Yeah, and different libraries have different roles for their librarians. I think it's important to kind of mention that, the library that we work for we have a big staff element. There's a lot of people that are working and they all have very specific roles at the library. But if you go to a smaller library, there might only be 2 or 3 actual librarians on staff and a lot of other people doing different jobs. So, when I worked at the Wyandotte Library, I was doing computer help and I was helping at circulation and I was answering reference questions for adult, kid, and teen, all of those collections. And, if somebody wanted to see like the Crane's auto book, I'd have to turn around and pull that out too. It was just, you're kind of a jack of all trades in that situation. So, it really, your job specifications definitely change from library to library.
So when I was in grad school as the, library science student that didn't work in a library yet, one of my first public library job, because I had a special library job before that, but my first public library job, the job title was program assistant. And that basically meant that in an under 20 an hour or 20 hour a week position, I was doing all of the programming for the library. We had a few people who would step in and cover like a program. We had one staff member who did a weekly story time. So I wasn't doing the regular story times. But in that time, I did like teen anime clubs. I did computer classes. I was managing presenters that were coming in. But in addition to all of that program stuff, I was also backup for our desk clerks. Our desk clerks, we had one desk. It was a very small library with one desk. They were an IT desk. They were the circulation desk. And they were the ones answering questions like we do at the reference desk. And so I was like backup for helping people with that if we were busy or if someone didn't know how to do something, because the desk clerks weren't librarians. So while they could do some things, there were times where it was a lot to ask of them.
Sure.
And that was a wild learning experience of doing so many parts of working in a library, some of which do tend to fall under librarian and some of which do not.
Yeah, definitely.
There's also the element of us being able to have a little bit more control over how we spend our day to day. If we want to suddenly become a specialist on this aspect of programming, we can do that. We can just look 3 months ahead and go to our department heads and say, hey, I want to do this for the next cycle. And they're going to be like, cool, have at that.
Right.
We can trade collections, not willy-nilly, but if we need a change of pace. I think I only have one collection that I've had the entire time I've been working as a librarian so far.
Okay.
I've been with the department for 10 years and have had a fair few collections. And I think only world languages is something that I've had that I got here with that I still work with. Everything else, my job looks very different than it did 5 years ago. My job looks very different than coworkers I have that have the exact same job title.
Yeah, definitely. So I would definitely say that the role is not static and unchanging. So that is a misconception.
For sure.
Busted. All right.
Put the graphic up.
Okay, here's one. Librarians do nothing but read all day.
Goals.
I know, right? If
I
only.
Dream.
If only. If only. I mean, I think there are times of the year where I might have like a lull in the insanity of what is my typical day to day, and I will be able to read a bit. But I'm not sitting there reading all day by any chance. Like, there's just no way.
No, and if I do get to read on desk more often than not, it's like my book club book.
Yeah.
Or, things like that.
Sure.
Or like we're going through picture books trying to find story time books.
Yeah. Yeah. And fortunately, in our department, I don't know what it's like for adult services and teen, but, we are, we're basically told to read, read as much as you can because it makes you better at what you do. So being on top of like, the best 10 books of the year or whatever, and at least having had read them, just because we have to do book talks, we have to recommend books on a regular basis. So, there used to be this sort of thought where you absolutely do not read on the job. You should not be reading. I've worked at other libraries where reading was not allowed. You did that on your personal time. And we're very fortunate in youth services, at least, where we're allowed to read without any issue or kickback.
It's a similar situation in adult where, we still have to look approachable. We still have to be that customer service persona on the desk, so we can't like pluck a book off the shelf and curl up in our chairs and have our back to anyone who might be walking up to the desk.
Yeah.
Much though we may want to in certain moods. But yeah, staying on top of what's in the zeitgeist, even if we're not reading it cover to cover. Staying on top of what's made the bestseller list on New York Times, and having a general mindset of what people might be coming in looking for, is a really important aspect of developing your ability to give good readers advisory and book recommendations and all of it.
And I think it's also evolved to not even just necessarily staying on top of what books are current, but kind of staying on top of what media is coming out, what people are watching on TV or their streaming services, what movies are coming out. Whenever like a new movie that has a book that is coming from a book comes out, we know we're going to get a bunch more people coming in for that book. The Wild Robot was like that.
Sure.
Things like that. But also when a property comes out that suddenly gets really big, you'll get people coming in. Oh my gosh, my kid loves this TV show. Do you have books for it? And sometimes the books have not come out yet.
K-pop Demon Hunters.
The TV show or the movie was first. But sometimes they're there. And so we kind of have to be aware of that. So one, we can be on the lookout for those to order.
For sure.
And then knowing that people are going to be looking for them.
Yeah. Okay, so we don't read all day. We wish we did, but we don't.
We sure do wish we did.
Okay. Is the library or working in a library a quiet and low stress job?
Okay, I have a story with this one because this was years ago. I stopped on my way to work, I think, to grab food because it was a day that I was closing. And I was going through the lines at some fast casual place. I don't even remember where I was. And they're trying to make small talk because there's a long line. It's slow. And they're like, yeah, what are you doing today? How's it going? I'm like, just grabbing food before work. Oh, where do you work? I'm like, oh, up at the library. That sounds like such a great job. I'd love to do that when I retire. That just sounds so quiet and peaceful. And I'm like, no.
No.
To an extent,
It can be.
I see where the misconception comes from. My department had one of her go-to lines in just describing the career is there's no such thing as a library emergency. And that's true to a very large extent. We are within our bubble where we're planning programming and having to man the service desk and all of these things. And it can seem stressful within our scope. None of it actually matters all that much.
Right.
In like the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
We're not constantly making life or death decisions.
Yes,
No.
we don't have the nuclear weapons button.
Yeah, and we're not responsible for large amounts of people or anything like that.
So to an extent, I get it, but especially quiet these days, absolutely not.
No, and I think, it depends on the day and it depends on the time of day and which department you're in, because I think that it's all very different depending on where you are in that building at any given moment. When we're in our workspace, yeah, it's quiet back there and generally not super chaotic unless we're trying to put together 200 craft bags for New Year's Eve or something. Then everybody's shuffling around and trying not to cut each other with paper and, yeah. So it just depends. I mean, I think it's maybe like most jobs. We don't have like super stressful days. Generally, again, when we had New Year's Eve, when we did countdown to New Year's, that was stressful. Oh, when we had Baffling Bill, that was stressful.
The alligators.
It's like big events where there's a lot of people coming in and people don't know what to expect, etc.
Yeah.
That those things can get hairy. And it happens. I mean, during summer reading, we have how many times do we have like a performer come in? 4 or 5 a year. And that's just in the summer.
Yeah, it's one of those like, are there major life-alteringly stressful moments? No, but if you are a person who gets stressed out by being overstimulated, there's a lot of things that can be really overstimulating in this job.
Definitely.
In the youth room, we work in a room where people bring their small children, and small children sometimes cry, scream, get upset. It's something we kind of have to deal with.
Honestly, from 11 until 12 o'clock, pretty much every day, it is a cacophony of screaming in that room.
It's part of the job.
And it's just part of the job.
Yeah, and it's similar on the adult and teen side, especially now that the library is sort of establishing itself in the community as a third space, especially for teens to come and study and hang out. And they come with a lot of noise. They come with a lot of Axe body spray. They come with the pizza that they try to sneak past us.
Oh, the pizza.
And the space is just completely different when they take it over in not a bad way. Not always in a good way, but not in a bad way at all. It's them utilizing the space as they need to.
And that's the thing is like when it can be stressful to deal with all of those things, but like at the end of the day, we're glad people are there. We're glad that the space has that value to the community and to the members of the community, and we want people to use it.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's like, you know, it's always we might have to go, you know, if someone's, you know, in a very quiet space being loud on their phone, or, you know, the teens are getting a little chaotic somewhere because they've been studying, and when you study too long,
you have
get
to
a
blow
bit
off some
chaotic.
steam. Yeah.
It's always just a reminder of space being used by a lot of people, you know, but we all in all, we want people to remember we're glad they're there.
Yeah.
We're not mad about them using the space.
No.
It's just a reminder.
And that's just to totally snuff that misconception, because no, it is not always quiet or low stress.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Busted.
Yeah.
We need a sound effect.
So libraries don't offer a specialization or advancement. I mean, we did talk about the specialization a little bit. And I think there's always room for some kind of advancement in libraries. There's supervisory positions that are available, and you could always make the big move to administration.
But I will say there is some truth to that, because if you don't want to manage people, there is kind of a cutoff as how far you can go. So it just depends on what you are looking for out of advancement. Because if you consider advancement like learning new things and having new challenges you can work on restructuring what you're doing to provide that opportunity.
And there's also great, professional groups like the Michigan Library Association or the American Library Association. They have great conferences that are very, very exciting and inspiring information for librarians to kind of push the boundaries of what they're actually doing on a day-to-day basis, too. Are libraries becoming obsolete?
Yes. No.
I mean, I feel like this was such a conversation when like ebooks became a thing.
Raise your hand if when you told someone you were going to grad school to become a librarian, they said, but libraries won't be here in 10 years. I'm raising my hand.
Same.
I'm old. But I did have to have a very interesting like dinner conversation with a childhood friend's father about, I know it's such a bizarre statement, but I was invited to like Thanksgiving dinner at their house, and he pulled me aside and he was just like, Nicole, I'm really concerned about your career choice. And I'm like, first of all, you're not my dad. Second of all, and I came up with this wonderful argument about why libraries were here to stay and convinced I felt like I did a great job of like just making it seem like we have so much value. And anyway, so we do have to defend ourselves about this particular thing from time to time. Ebooks that was definitely the time. I think with AI, same thing. We're probably getting some of those questions as well. People still need us to like figure things out for them.
I think obsolete is the wrong word. I think our library is becoming less book-centric. In this exact moment, not so much, unless you look at like the reference materials that are slowly transitioning online. But there will probably be a time in the very near future where libraries are less book-centric. They are still pillars of the community. They are still access points to books, to media, to everything.
Information.
Yeah, I think it's less obsolescence and more expanding how we provide access to information to our communities. As the way people consume information, try to retrieve information, as that changes, libraries adapt so that we can help people with that process. And that's, Nicole talked about professional development. A lot of that is learning new things about ways to expand that access to information and help people with navigating that.
Yeah,
So-
we're always changing, and that's kind of a cool part of the job, is
Yeah,
that we can change.
That's what it needs to be.
Yeah.
You know, we're looking at a building remodel in the next year or so, and the way that the spaces are being utilized and what we're prioritizing are so different from what they were in 2007 when we did our last remodel, from the 80s and 90s when those buildings were being put up. You know, it is a different game, but it's not that different.
Yeah.
And I don't think the books are going away anytime
God,
soon.
no.
No. I mean, I think
If anyone was worried.
yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear that even with younger generations, that having physical books, there's still a benefit to having physical books.
I have friends who are in they're not in libraries but in bookstore spaces, and the way that they see children come in and interact with books, a lot of them have talked about how it's actually a renewed emphasis on physical books with children that they're seeing, where like they didn't see kids necessarily coming in as much and parents bringing them in to look at books, and now they're seeing it more and more. So I think it just comes in cycles.
Yeah, sure.
But
All right, so libraries are not becoming obsolete.
No.
Busted. All right, we'll do one more. Libraries are still a mandated quiet space.
I think we busted that one already.
I mean, it's not. Libraries aren't the quiet spaces that they once were. I distinctly recall being a young person going to my public library, and they had these like high ceilings with lots of glass, and so any sound that was made would just like echo into like this chasm. And, you know, the kids area was not separate from the rest of the library. And so, like, my squeal of joy would be very quickly
Probably still
reprimanded
echoing.
by the head librarian, who would come flying out from behind her desk with her bad hip. She would hobble at me. And I'm like, oh, God, here she comes. Yeah, so things are different. We don't do that anymore. We don't even shush people, really, unless they're going absolutely, like, buck wild somewhere.
Which is unfortunate because I took a grad elective in shushing.
Yeah. So, no, I mean, it is a community space. There's going to be some sound and noise involved with that. Do we try to, like, contain some of our noises? I think so. And with the new building, the way that it's going to be renovated, there's going to be a little bit more sound dampening. There was a lot of sound dampening discussion about the new building. It's not a new building.
Something
you know
about
what I mean.
high ceilings and echoiness.
Yeah. So, you know, sound carries. And we're not going to expect people to be quiet. We just want to kind of keep them separated.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it is not a quiet space.
Nope.
Busted. All right. So those are our common misconceptions. They are very, very, some of them are true, some of them are not true, but hopefully we cleared some things up for all of our audience members.
Yeah, I think they all have either a kernel of truth or a kernel of history involved. Like, there are reasons that the career and the building are thought of like this. Doesn't make it accurate.
Right. And again,
Something about that ever-changing nature
Yeah.
means the circumstances change.
totally. And I mean, in 10 years, there might be different misconceptions about libraries and librarians.
Yep.
So, all right. Well, thanks for listening, and we will see you next time. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Distracted Librarians.
Many thanks to BCTV for their support in recording, editing, and releasing this podcast, and to the Friends of the Library for sponsoring closed captioning on every episode.
If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to reach out to us at distracted@btpl.org.
Until then, keep those pages turning and those screens lighting up. We'll catch you in the next episode.
The views and opinions expressed in the Distracted Librarians podcast do not necessarily reflect those of Bloomfield Township Public Library, Bloomfield Community Television, the Birmingham Area Cable Board, or its producers or production staff.